So what I study is to understand how enterprise social media affect various type of work outcomes. The reason I'm studying enterprise social media is that there's actually been an uptick in adoption in recent years. I think in 2009, McKinsey report came out, only 28% of firms has used some type of social networking tools. But by 2012, that has gone up to 53%. So we are familiar with consumer-facing social media, such as Twitter, Facebook. There are lots of studies, lots of startups or industry activities around the consumer-facing social media. But how enterprise social media affects performance, affects firms, affects employees, affects collaborations, hasn't been examined. And that's what I'm trying to do, to understand how enterprise social media enables network formation, enables information acquisition, and how these intermediate benefits ultimately affect various work outcomes, such as your billable revenue or your probability of being laid off in life cycle. So information diversity and social communication are two factors I'm looking at in this research. And I found that both have an impact on your work outcomes, just affect them differently. For example, information diversity measures how much information or how diverse your information is. And I'm measuring this through machine learning techniques, looking at your email chats and calendar events, basically all your electronic communications. And we found that information diversity is strongly correlated with your billable revenue. And the more information you have, the more likely you're able to bill. It makes sense in a sense. Like the more information you have, you're a better worker and you're better able to solve your client's problem. Interestingly, we found that a particular topic called social communication does not have a direct impact on your billable revenue, but has a tremendous impact on whether you get laid off in the 2009 recession. When you have social communication, have the words such as coffee, lunch, dinner, football, baseball, these social words. The more words you have in your communication, the less likely you're to be laid off. And in fact, that's the most significant predictor above and beyond your objective performance measures in predicting whether you get laid off. I think the social communication one is surprising because I thought, I deliberately picked industry where you can measure your value to the firm very clearly. Like in the end, how much money you bring to the firm should be the ultimate value. I would thought all the other stuff should maybe have a bit of predictive power, but in fact, what I found is that social communication has bigger power than your objective performance in predicting whether you get laid off in the 2009 recession. I think that was really surprising to me. But I'm not saying that people should necessarily just stop working and social communicate all the time. But I'm thinking that perhaps there's some kind of intended value that people social communicate can provide that we don't see. Perhaps this person is a really good team player. Like he's really enjoy working with this person. Maybe that makes him. Maybe he did not build directly, but he enabled his coworkers or his colleagues to do a better job. Perhaps that's one reason. Or you can think of the traditional old boys club where people who tend to schmooze a lot get better. But I don't know which one's which. But but that's really surprising to me. I guess importantly, well, obviously you want to do a good job. Getting lots of information on time is very important, and your social network plays a really key role in helping you get the information. But social networks also helps you to, smooth the relationship around you. Perhaps you shouldn't just, be the Dilbert in an office, always just work and code and do what you need to do. It actually pays perhaps to, get to know your coworkers, to understand what's going on at workforce. And those kind of intangible benefits through social communication can be very valuable to workers. And for managers, again, maybe as I think whether social communication is a positive, negative in your workforce, I think manager has a particularly better insight than anyone else. Maybe social communication is really a lubricant, makes the team collaboration better, then you should foster that. But if social communication really is about political backstabbing or old boys club, maybe you should try to stem that from happening. I think it's becoming aware that social media, in particular enterprise social media, can have productivity effect is very important. And in particular, what was important as firms started adopting enterprise social media at their workplace. I think before anyone is starting to do that, I think it's really important to understand potential implications for our workforce. What is the mechanisms going on? What enables your workers or employees to do a better job? And before knowing that's what's happening, you may actually experience some unexpected consequences of adopting enterprise social media. So although I'm studying consultants, but I think this type of work can generally be applicable to all kinds of information workers, including lawyers, consultants, scientists, any kind of information-related worker will find this research very valuable. And I think as enterprise social media is becoming more prominent, any firms are trying to adopt this type of technology will find this very interesting as well. I think the closest one perhaps is Marissa Mayer's decision to ask all the workers to show up instead of working remotely. I think there's a lot of backlash against that particular policy, especially for working moms. I'm a working mom myself. But I actually think there's some merits in that as well, but for the workers. If you think social communication is really going to be such an important predictor in your career outcomes or career trajectories, perhaps it pays to show up and to lubricate this social communication around you and to understand each other, to understand your colleagues, to know what's going on. Because a lot of information, or especially intangible information, are passed on through water cooler conversations. But if you're working at home all the time without having that access, perhaps you're actually doing your own, you're actually worse off as a result if you're kept doing that. So I think Marissa has a point, but whether we should enforce 100%, I think it depends on the setting, depends on the firm, what's needed, and perhaps Marissa made the right decision. I don't know. I mean, it's up to Yahoo. Well, I guess it's depends on the person again, right? This perception again depends on who you're talking to. Perhaps for a consultant, this may not be as surprising. I don't know. But for someone, for like me or anybody who's in the industry, at least in America, we think of meritocracy, right? We think that meritocracy is ultimately what gets us, promoted. We are rewarded for doing our job well. But the fact that this research have shown that social communication matters. It's interesting takeaway in the sense that not only should you do your job well, but you should worry about some other intangible communication or other stuff you have to do at work to make it more likely that you'll be keeping your job or getting promoted or improve your career outcomes. I think enterprise social media in general hasn't been studied much. We see a lot of, again, Facebook and Twitter, social media that's consumer-facing. And what's unique about this research is that I have the real social network of employees. Because if you think about your electronic communication channels, including your calendar events that capture some of the meeting in Facebook encounters, these are all real communication, that your real network at work. And to capture that precisely, to understand the intermediate outcome that networks can produce is something that hasn't been done before. So I'm actually in the process of finishing another project related to this, and where we found an emergence of a network bias techno change. In the sense, as the social media is being adopted at work, we actually see a digital divide among workers. So you think that perhaps social media enable people to find each other more easily, and may therefore erase some of the barriers that we have in connecting to other people at work. And perhaps the Dilbert of the world will be better off, because now he has to use social media to find the people he needs to find. But in fact, what I found is actually a little disconcerting in the sense that Dilberts are becoming worse off as social media becomes more available. If you think about it, if you are making a connection, you need to find a person you want to connect, but you also need to persuade that person to become connected to you. So as the search costs have become erased because of social media, this conversion cost of making the person become your friends is even becoming more prominent. As a result, if you have a lot of social capital before, you will be even better off because you have the power to make that person be connected to you. Whereas if you don't have that power, even if you found the person you need to find, they may not choose to connect with you, and then you're actually worse off. So in a sense, we actually do see a rich get richer and poor get poorer phenomenon with enterprise social media. And I think that's, again, some unexpected consequences that firms should try to understand before they adopt this type of technologies.